And the reality is that we're not doing particularly well in the grand scheme of things. We're still in a decline in America. And the trend is downhill because it's exponential. Growth is exponential in movements, but decline is also. It starts doubling up. So Barna can state that in 20 years we'll have 50% less church attendance. And whether he's right or wrong on that, it's certainly the trend is there. So the problem for us is that the best forms of church that we've got to address the situation can maybe reach into what I would say is, in America, probably 40% of the population. That is the current form of church, the contemporary church. And we are, the seeker-sensitive, or however you want to name that, can reach into a segment of the population that would be within the cultural orbit of that church. So I think 40%. But the problem is that most of our churches are geared towards that segment. So here you have 95%, maybe more of our churches trying to reach 40% of the population. Well, that's a problem. And here you have the situation is that you've got 60% of the rest of the population who not. That model ain't going to reach them. Because if it was, it would have done that already. What about the 60%? Well, then you say, well, more of the same is not going to get the job done. But it's on the decline, folks. We're designed for advance, not defense. We're an advancing body. And I don't mean to be triumphalistic about it, but I think the gospel is the triumph of God in Jesus Christ, and we are meant to represent that. And the church is an advancing body. If we're not advancing, there's something we're doing as leaders, as people who've got something in our hands to do. Because I think we can trust that Jesus has built in potentials in us that will create community, will create movements and advance. And again, movements understand that. They just connect with that powerful transformative force, which is the gospel. And out it goes, you know? Because actually I do believe that recovery of being movements again, I believe that actually the recovery of that form will be part of the answer, and a major part of the answer for the problem of the church in the West. Yeah, apostolic genius is made up of 6 elements, hinting at the kind of DNA of the church as a movement. I saw it as a system, as this dynamic kind of relationship of various elements that came together, that if one was removed from the equation, you don't go there, you don't go to exponential movement. Remember, that's what I'm trying to dig in here, is how do church movements grow exponentially, reach what Roland Allen calls spontaneous expansion of the church. At the heart of the church and the heart of God's people is this innate capacity that God has built into the church. That is the combination of these elements. And here's the theory, is if one of them is missing, you don't go exponential. It doesn't matter which one you take out. All of them are needed to create exponential movement. So, you know, it's the actual irreducible minimum of what movements are made of in terms of the dynamic system. Okay, so overview of the 6 elements very quickly is that the centerpiece around which the others orbit is the Jesus is Lord piece. So here you have is a worldview in a sentence. Actually, a worldview in 3 words, which is quite remarkable. And that's why it's kind of theologically dense enough to hold a movement together. So that's the heart of it, is that centerpiece. The next one is discipleship and disciple making. That is, it's very close to Jesus as Lord, because this is how the individual believer lives out the Lordship of Christ in community. Discipleship and disciple making are foundational to any movement. No matter which movement you observe, you will find that they're obsessed pretty much with discipleship and disciple making. Everyone's a disciple and no one ever stops being a disciple. Then the other one I go to is missional incarnational impulse. God is a missionary God, the church is a sent people. We see in Jesus the kind of model of mission. You go among a group of people, you speak from within them. If God is a sending God, this is how God sends. Missional incarnational go together. It's the outward and the deepening impulse that associates with movements. And here you actually see the sneeze being worked out. It's like as it establishes itself and then it sneezes out further and further. The following one I go to is apostolic environment. If we're going to be a missional church and a missional movement, we have to have missional forms of ministry to go along with that. Ephesians 4 expresses that the church has got 5-fold form: the apostolic, prophetic, evangelistic, pastoral and didactic, or the teaching role. And I think a lot of the frustration at the moment in missional church circles is everyone wants missional church, but they don't want missional ministry. I would say if you take this out, you can't have movement. Then we go to organic systems. Organic systems has to do with the organizational structure of movements. Movements that go spontaneous and exponential, they have a very decentralized form. power and function are distributed outwards. Every agent has got the capacity to reproduce the whole. And then we have communitas, which is the final piece. Communitas is a community formed in the context of an ordeal, a challenge, a task, a mission that requires each player to find each other in a new significant way to get the job done. Friends become comrades, team players. All movements that change the world seem to have a comradeship and a sense of each other's backs that we tend to lack in Western expressions of church. We can't think of these as silver bullets, each and of themselves, but we need to see them as a kind of living system, each independent and interrelating with the other pieces. You change one, it changes the whole. All six need to be present, and I would argue are present in every church, but are forgotten, hence the book, The Forgotten Ways. They lie underneath, dormant, but they're there and they can be awoken, and that's our job. At heart, the Jesus movements are people movements, that is, everyone gets to play. Every believer carries the potential for world transformation in them, every single one of us. And we don't even have to be long in Jesus to actually carry all the potentials of the whole in us. Every believer is a church planter. Every church is a church planting church, right? Which is to say that everyone carries the potential for the whole in them. And that's one of the most amazing things. As a spark has a potential for a flame, as a flame has a potential for a fire that consumes a forest. In a seed is the potential of a tree, and a tree is a potential for a forest. But it's all contained in the spark, all contained in the seed, in potential. In the same way, every believer carries the potential of the whole in us. If we, for a moment, began to kind of wrap our minds around that, you realize that you look at any church and you see this is a kind of a massive amount of seeds in here. Every one of them has the potential to be a church and ought to be a church planter. And every church that comes out of them ought to do the same.